people that are here tonight, but the ones that I know, and particularly our men's group. Anyone who's part of our worldwide men's group, go ahead and raise your hand. So what I'd like you to understand about this group of people is that this is a group of men who come together and express their hearts. Can you believe that? I know it was difficult for me to believe when I first became part of the group, but they proved it over and over again. And this is something that is absolutely necessary in the world, as is the message that because of these men and the way they share in our group, I felt it was time to bring a message. And that's why I'm here tonight. And that message is about another way to create. And this is an exercise, perhaps you've experienced it in some form, where in a group of people, you can do this with each one in the group, and it's called the Sufi blessing because it is an exercise in part of the Kankas, the Sufi communities, where they recognize each other, they look at each other, and through the exercise, they hold the gaze of the person they're looking at continuously.
Yeah.
And you are holding that gaze, and then at a certain moment, you'll offer your hand to the other person. And the other person, if they choose, can accept that and place that hand on their heart. And this is happening simultaneously to both. Now you're joined eye to eye, Isby to Isby, and hand to hand, hand in hand on the heart. So heart to heart as well. And then after a moment of feeling that energy, you sing to the other person, and you're singing these words. You are my beloved, I open my heart to you. When you do that with another individual, when you do it together, while you're connected heart to heart, eye to eye, Isby to Isby, something really special happens. And then to close that moment, you hug. And in a group of people, you're doing that not just with one, but you can form two circles. The Sufis did it in a dance that looked like the helix, the DNA. But a group of people, two circles, an inner and an outer circle, and one circle moves, and now you're in front of another person, and you do that again with that individual. And so there can be men to woman, woman to woman, man to man, all the possibilities. And now in these times, the possibilities are almost infinite with the various explanations of gender. And within that aspect of creation, intention and attention are the core of creation. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. The thing is, whatever we create within this polarity will, however righteous we try and make it, or however evil we try and make it, both qualities will exist in whatever we create in polarity. That's the mind. If we come to understand that, perhaps we can begin to realize that, okay, that's one way to create. Is this the only way? And if it is, then eventually we destroy ourselves. there is another way. And yes, you know what I'm going to say. That's the way of the heart. When you, it's not just the heart, it's a place in the heart that remains in unity. It's part of the original creation of the sperm and the cell coming together. And the first split of those, there has to be a moment when both of those pass through something called the great void. Others call it the 0 point. It happens every time creation takes place. Well, that space remains within us, literally within us. And when we find a connection to that space, when we can actually enter it, and I believe at some point all of you have, when you can create from that place, there is no polarity. Now, at that moment, you have the opportunity to create in a different way. And that, if you choose, you can still use attention and intention to create, which is what we do from the mind. But attention and intention now have a different meaning. There's another way to create as well in that place, and that is to not use attention and intention, to simply trust. What are you trusting in that moment? Where's it coming from? What is trust? Trust is understanding that moment of creation when that zygote, that fertilized cell divided into two, didn't it have to trust in that moment? Trust is the step into creating that is absolutely necessary. And when you trust in life, whatever you call it, spirit and God, call it anything you wish, then that's all it takes to create. If we did that within ourselves as just part of this group, we'd change the world today. So for me, this is part of the opening of 2024, that sideways 8, figure 8, and the containment of it within our hearts as we are today. I'd like to say something about pain. Real pain begins when you start accessing a place in yourself and you realize that you are creating your reality. And when you realize in that time that you have, for whatever reason, been trying to control the reality and in the process hurting others, that's when real pain begins. That's when real change begins. And so this is a moment that has to come in everybody's life at some point. And it never, once it starts, it never ends. It becomes the work that we all do to be in service to life rather than trying to control it. And so it's a great question. And it's hard to really understand it until you get at least partially on that pathway of accessing the inner knowing that knows that life is just all about balance. And it's our time once that doorway opens to bring balance into our part of life. So they're great questions, but the answers aren't just a simple thing. It's about accessing that part of yourself first.
Well, and honestly, we've talked about there's been through the ages, there's always people that are saying the rapture's coming or change is coming, or people, it's happened forever, for as old as history. And so, what makes this any different than any other time with a bunch of New Agers, hocus pocus people that are trying to say change is coming, and the rest of humanity is going, nothing's going to change.
Mm.
Part of the issue, I think, is that where we're at with the environment and where we're at with certain technology has created this timeline, if you want to call it that, or the event line that has no room for error. And I think that's part of why we're in special circumstances right now, because the technology on this planet has made an impact to other solar systems through magnetic streams, and that has put us under contract basically to have this change happen no matter what. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of what makes this a little different than previous, New Agers crying wolf, or saying, whatever, you know what I'm saying.
So
We're under special circumstances right now, and
yeah.
that's partly why there's no room for error, and they will not leave this up to chance.
And the other part to that, Kevin, that I'll add is that all of this hinges on personal responsibility
Yes.
and the ability of each one of us to accept our personal responsibility in what we're putting out into the energy of this place. This is a community. The earth, however many billion people there may be, it's still just one community. And there is the personal responsibility that we hold is to do the best for that community and for the earth itself. And without that, until we all get that, um, it won't be complete. The last one out, turn out the lights. I remember that when Alberta, was going to take over the energy of Canada. Anyway, um, we're all in this together. We really are. And so the more we can do to take personal responsibility for our part, then that's really the highest work we can do.
Well,
Cal, yeah, thank you. I think you're doing a great job of explaining the absurdity of how things work at this time and how they worked for a long time. Uh, and so I'd like to give you a few concepts um, to see how they fly with you. What we've created is a creation of the mind. We have lived with that now, not just for centuries, but for millennia. The thing about the mind is that it's not the spirit. The spirit is something else. That's the real life. That's the life that keeps the ones we're talking about in fear. This is what they fear. That there is a difference between these two worlds. The world they control is the world of the mind. The thing about that is that if we try to deal with these issues in the same way from the world of the mind, then we're creating in exactly the same way. We're not dealing with the other possibility. And that other possibility is creating from the world of spirit. What's the difference? What is the other way? The other way exists within us, and that is the world of the heart. It's the only way out of this mess. And so, instituting a new currency, I'm going to point out one of the absurdities of modern times. Do you know that in order for Bitcoin to create their currency, they use more power now, more energy than the country of the Netherlands in order to create their currency? We're going down a road that is in and of itself another creation of the mind, and therefore continuing to create the absurdity. The reason the mind is the way that will lead us down these false roads, these false paths, is because it creates in polarity. It's a product of duality. Whatever you create from the mind, you're also creating its opposite. This throws us down a road every time that goes deeper and deeper into the trail of the actual separation from spirit. And so, my proposal is that at some point we begin to realize that the actual way out of this is to go within. Correct. But to end the war that is this war between the mind and the heart. And so this is actually a concept, it's a proposal. And I thought I would bring that to the discussion today.